Archie, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
And Zach too, because you know what? We're cousins.
I know.
So I just have to tell the story real quick. It was so random. It was late November, and I don't know why I even went into my spam folder. This is how God shows up in my life. I went into my spam folder for some reason, and I see an email from Archie Messersmith, and that's all I saw. I realized your last name is hyphenated.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the date, and it was November 16th, which is my birthday. I was like, what is happening? It was like God showed up. He was like, you need to talk to Archie. You have a long lost cousin.
So she's like, are we cousins? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm sure we are somehow.
Probably.
I mean, with a name like Messersmith.
Right? How bizarre is that?
I mean, it was bizarre.
I literally have not ever met anybody that wasn't in my family with the same last name.
Yeah, I mean, cuz, come on.
Come on, cuz. So I was like, okay, we're cousins. That's it. You got to come on the podcast.
So here we are.
So here we are. And you're known as the feelings guy.
The feelings guy. That's right. Yeah.
That's super fun. We're going to have such a good time. And those of you who are listening to this, you must go onto YouTube and see the video because we are this Christmas season.
I literally was like, can I wear a festive shirt or will it date the, and she was like, wear it. Because here's the tea. I have like 35 Christmas sweaters and I don't go anywhere. So I mean, like,
who has 35? We are related. You crazy?
I mean, so like literally, I'm like, okay. So yesterday we were on a thing. I wore a sweater. I'm wearing one at night. I mean, like, I wear one to the mailbox. I mean, like, otherwise, I'm never gonna get them worn. So
that's hilarious. And your current festive Christmas sweater is a pug with a Santa
it's a pug.
hat.
It's little Mary Pugmas. Yeah, like a little baby.
Mary Pugmas. Amazing. Well,
but I also have some Hanukkah sweaters. I just want to, for all the people out there. I do have some Hanukkah
You're
sweaters.
very inclusive.
I want to be inclusive of the humans. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Inclusive of the humans.
This is not a fashion podcast. Carry on.
Carry on. Yes. Well, I'm wearing my I Love Everyone and You're Next t-shirt from my friend Maitreya, who is starting her podcast. And when she told me that was the name, I was like, and I call her my soul twin. She really is. It's like, I do love everyone. I mean, until you give me a reason not to. And even then, I'm like, meh, I'll give you a little pass. I'll give you a pass once in a while. Anyway, so we'll start out this morning. I thought it'd be fun to start out with like lightning round questions. Dun, dun, dun.
Excited and scared. Yeah,
excited and scared. Yeah, I didn't even tell you what they were ahead of time.
Now I got no idea what's going on. Let's do it.
Ooh, very exciting. Okay, so are you familiar with the term quitlet? Quit literature?
Is that from Harry Potter?
I don't think so. I don't know where it came from, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, I want to be like one of the cool kids.
It's a joke. Quidditch is a game in Harry Potter.
Quidditch.
Quitlet. I don't know what quitlet is now.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Right over my head.
Woo.
Quitlet is like quit literature. So it's like the recovery memoirs or how to quit drinking.
Okay. Oh, quitlet. Okay.
Yeah, literature.
I'm with you now. I know what you're saying.
I know. Gotcha. Maybe I should not use that term anymore. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. But now that you know, you're like, oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I didn't make it up. So do you have a favorite book that helped you get sober?
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe one of your favorite books.
I literally just moved it because I told you we're moving the office. It's like, it's called like Permission to Heal or something. That sits right here. It usually sits right here, but it's not here anymore. Yeah.
Permission to Heal.
Yeah.
I'll leave a link in the show notes. So if you're driving, you will not have to jot this down. What was it about that book that stuck out for you?
There was a lot of healing to be done with the feelings guy here. And I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead, but like as a suicide attempt survivor, there sometimes was some guilt that like I made it and why did I make it? So, when I was in college, I drove my car off a cliff and then climbed out of the car. I mean, sober as a church mouse. I was in a tux going to sing. So there were all these times in my life, overdosed more times than like people change their underwear. And like, so there's some, for me, there was some, I needed permission to like actually forgive myself and heal and move on.
Permission. Yeah. Elizabeth Gilbert, I think Elizabeth Gilbert, the one Eat, Pray, Love. She did
Okay.
a amazing on the Calm app. She did this amazing talk about the permission slip, right? And it's like you give yourself permission to
Mm.
whatever. And forgiveness is one of those things that we need to give ourselves permission to receive,
Mm.
right? I love that idea of
You know what's you know
permission.
what's you know what's crazy though. So I'm a professional speaker, and so that means I speak a lot. In case you didn't know what that meant,
Yeah, I get it.
I
Podcast host.
you got it. Okay, great. Uh, you know what's interesting is that the topic of forgiveness really only lives in the religious circles. So when I'm speaking to people that are like not like I sort of have to explain, here is what hanging on to resentment and anger and like, and so it's been really fascinating to watch people's response to that, because if they didn't grow up in the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
forgiveness is not a thing that we just talk about. Like it's not really a thing. And I guess because growing up in the South and growing up in the church and all this, it's like normal for me. But it's a topic that we need to talk about a lot more, because I say there's the weight lifted off your shoulders. That saying exists for a reason. Like it's a real
Yeah.
thing. So anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
absolutely. I've heard this analogy that collecting these little resentments is like putting a pebble in a bag that you fling over your shoulder and you walk around with. And
Mm-hmm.
over time, it's like you become accustomed to that weight. You don't even really notice it, but at
Yeah.
some point you reach a breaking point because it becomes too heavy. The
Yeah.
straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think in recovery, a lot of that recovery work is about forgiveness, self-forgiveness,
Yep.
releasing. And that's interesting. I am so indoctrinated into like the recovery world. It didn't even dawn on me that maybe forgiveness isn't discussed like in quote unquote mainstream.
It's not in like
It's
the
not.
secular world. It's not.
Huh.
So the analogy I come up with. So girl, I'm a big chicken fried rice boy. I love me some chicken fried rice. Don't play with me on chicken fried rice. But I feel like when you order the takeout, you're one of two people. You either
Huh?
pour it in a bowl or you eat out of the container.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a
Yeah.
pour it in a bowl kind of guy, because
Why?
I don't want to lose any of the rice pebbles. I don't want to lose any of them. And when you eat out of the takeout, like the top kind of no, I'm playing. I pay for my chicken fried rice.
Okay.
So I poured in a bowl.
Okay.
So when you first begin to eat the rice, it's that M word that sounds like moist. It's that word, and it's good. It's good. But when you put it in the sink, if you don't wash it off,
Uh-huh.
this rice that was once very soft becomes like cement.
Yeah.
And so my analogy is that, like, if you hold on to resentment or anger, whatever, you have these like chicken fried rice bowls just building up inside of you, and eventually they got to go somewhere. Like and then
Yeah.
somebody pushes you one too many times, and it just all comes pouring out. And it's been amazing to see the college students, high school students, corporate America humans are like, yes,
Uh-huh.
but it's such a simple analogy. But then it's because they've never talked about it. They don't
Yeah.
talk about forgiveness. So yeah, it's crazy.
It's about forgiveness. That's so interesting. I came up with this analogy myself. I don't even know where it came from. It just like flew into my head one day when it was like, I talk about self-care a lot. And I use the analogy of a pitcher of red Kool-Aid. Like we all wake up with this pitcher of red Kool-Aid and it's full to the top. I mean, it gives me anxiety just thinking about it. But because if you spill that shit, it's
Oh,
sticky, gets everywhere, and
it
it
stains. Yeah,
stains.
it
Yeah, it
stains.
stains. And so a morning care routine is so important because it's like pouring it out, right? And then
Yeah.
if you don't, you're literally walking through life with this pitcher full of red Kool-Aid,
Oh,
and
that's
you get
good.
triggered by somebody bumps into you and you spill that shit. Man, I can't tell you the number. So funny. I can't tell you the number of times where I was like, I'm going to pass on my self-care this morning. And I'm too busy,
Too
too
busy.
busy, too
Too
busy.
busy.
Just means
Mm-hmm.
that it's not, self-care is not a priority,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's all that
Mm-hmm.
means. And so I go through this, I'm like, I dismiss it. I think it's not important. And then I
Mm-hmm.
move through my life through this, and then someone triggers me and you
Mm-hmm.
spill it. Man, I remember working at this company, and this girl, she had been giving me a hard time at work, and my pitcher was full. And she just said one more, like the straw that broke the camel's back. She just said one more thing to me. She bumped into me and I spilled that Kool-Aid
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. I made her cry. And
Mm-hmm.
the manager got involved. She sat us both down to talk about it. I mean, it was bad. And although we cleaned it up, my relationship with her was never the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never the same. So that's sort of the analogy I give, like why it's so important to do your self-care practice in the morning, pour out that Kool-Aid so you're not going to get triggered throughout your day.
You know what I tell people that if you're so busy that at night you can't let the entire cycle of the Sonicare toothbrush go, then you're too busy. Then there's something else. If you cannot literally let the entire electric toothbrush do its thing, look at your life. What's going on? Look at your
life. It's time to slow down.
Morning, night, whatever you do.
Hopefully twice a day.
Okay. Now we're judging. Okay, and we're judging already. But you're right. I think there's something lightning around, but this is just too good. So this thing with the red Kool-Aid,
don't worry.
I completely agree with you. And so this is what I began to realize at the beginning of the pandemic. So I call the pandemic an experience because it just
pandemic experience.
It just sounds better than what it really was.
There are going to be so many books written about this.
There really are. That we as humans, we've all learned what we need to do to keep our feelings pressed down.
Press.
Okay, right. But we've all learned, how to keep them down. Well, the problem is when a pandemic occurs, that you have all these new feelings that you didn't know existed. And so then they're all coming. And so then you can't hold the feelings down anymore. And so I believe with all that is in me that I feel bad for somebody named Karen, but the Karens of the world, in January, I just don't believe Miss Karen would have responded that way. I just don't. I believe that they couldn't keep this down and this out at the same time. Yeah. And somebody pumped them and that red Kool-Aid just went everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're kind of beginning to see is that the world is realizing they have feelings. And what do we do with these feelings? And why aren't we doing anything with them? So that's my take.
People do not know how to process their feelings to resolution.
I swear, I wish everybody could go to rehab. I mean, I'm serious.
I know, right?
I mean, I think it's called a spa in the rest of the world, but I wish they could go to rehab and learn some stuff.
I mean, a spa is good for some physical self-care, some spiritual connectedness, but man, doing the work of recovery is not easy. Putting the pen to paper and doing self-examination, it's very challenging. It's like, have you ever tried to put two magnets together that weren't the same? Yeah. They just slip. It's like I mean, I feel like the only thing I do in moderation is recovery work. Actually, that's not true. I do more recovery work than anyone I know.
It's like, don't play right now.
I know. Sometimes. Okay, lightning round. Shall we return?
Yeah, let's go back. Yes.
Back to that. Do you have a favorite go-to mantra or quote that you live by? Or maybe just some favorites like mine?
Hard.
I know. I'll give you. Do you want me to give you mine to give you an idea?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
And I'll let you think about it. So obviously mine is ODAT, one day at a time. Because I feel like any fool can stay sober one day at a time. That's rude. But no, really, it's like one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. It's like all we can do is stay sober right now. And in the beginning, when you're jonesing, the cravings kick in or you're overwhelmed by feelings and the desire and the cravings for a drink is so bad. Sometimes we just have to be like, I'm just going to get through this 1 hour, this one day.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Mine is, I'm not going to try to quote the whole thing anymore, but the acceptance will be the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it's because some person, place, or thing in my life is unacceptable to me, and I can find that one. So let me see what I did. This is when I lived in New York City. I went to Kinko's because nobody had printers in their home, and I printed it out and I laminated it, and I put that bitch in my shower. And every morning I would say the acceptance thing. I used to know what page number. I'm not that good anymore. But that and
acceptance is so that's a good one.
Expectations or resentments in training.
Oh my gosh, that was my thing yesterday. I interviewed somebody yesterday and her thing was the same one. Expectations are like the building blocks of resentments or something.
Yeah. I use that in life, and people don't know that it comes from. But the people that are in program are like, when I'm speaking, I'm like, I see you. I see you.
To give you the little wink and the
little wink.
Yeah, 2 snaps. By the way, I used your 2 snaps thing yesterday in the speaking engagement.
Did you?
I did. It was awesome.
Oh, good.
Yes. Okay. Expectations are premeditated resentments. Is that the thing?
Expectations are resentments in training.
Resentments in training. It's funny how there's a few ways to say that.
To say it. Yeah.
Resentments in, I'm writing this down. in training. Okay, love it. Do you have a morning self-care routine, or is it more weekly? What is your recovery self-care process like?
Yeah, I mean, so self-care is kind of my jam because I'm a mental
Yeah,
health speaker. I mean, this is what I
yeah.
do. But so this has changed since we have a child. So we have a toddler, and my husband, I'm a gay, in case you haven't figured that out by now. I'm a gay. And my husband is not a morning person. So,
Oh,
I really am. I really enjoy the mornings.
uh-huh.
So I used to have like a whole ritual that I would get up and I would read my books and I would, blah, blah, blah. That sort of goes, that piece goes away when you
Oh
got a
my
toddler
God, we
that,
are like twins. I'm the same way. My husband is not a
um,
morning person either.
uh,
Okay, so what happens? So you spend a lot of time in the morning doing your books and writing and all
I
that?
used to,
Oh,
used to.
before Cade.
Before Kate. But now, but I also think, we won't, you never ask a lady's age, but I'm in my 40s. And I did not grow up thinking I would have a child. That wasn't a dream that I had because it
Oh,
wasn't
really?
possible. No, I mean, it's not possible to have a child when you're growing up in the South in the
Isn't
80s and
that
everything.
crazy that in this day and age, even then?
So my morning routine is loving on my child. And
Oh,
then when I do take him to school, because he goes to pre-K, really kind of spending that time coming back home, like getting myself centered. Because what's crazy is that when my husband does wake up, he always wants to show me some like YouTube video or something. And I'm like, what is going on right now? I'm trying to like be zen. And it's like something or other.
he's all
But
looky. It's so funny.
I'm like, what is happening?
Is the
Um,
content he's sharing with you funny, inspirational, or is it shocking? Like, what's the nature of the things that he likes
I
to share
mean,
with you?
it it's usually just ridiculous. Like,
Is it
now
funny?
sometimes it's sweet. Sometimes it's like, because we're both Broadway people, like loving the Broadway. So like sometimes
Uh-huh.
it's like Broadway artists that have like, done some new things, or usually it's like RuPaul's Drag Race, something or other. Some queen is off, blah, like all over the place is what it usually is. But I like starting my own business has also made me really turn back to self-care and
Yeah.
really, really practice what I preach of like, nope, okay, going for a walk. I just got to get,
Yeah.
I also practice. I'm a big believer in gratitude, and so
Huge.
when I shower, that's my mental trigger that like focus on gratitude, because no one else is there usually, but like usually no one else is in the shower, and I can say I am grateful for and like talk about that. So yeah.
Yeah, there's that idea that whatever we focus on expands, and spending time in gratitude. They say if you can remember, especially when we were thinking about rewiring or retraining our brain early in recovery, that if you feel a feeling for 16 seconds, it goes into your hippocampus, which is like the storage area
Hmm.
of your memories. So
Yeah, yeah,
and it's so important to focus on like being grateful for your wins, your progress, like
yeah.
specifically gratitude for your like celebrate the wins and then feel the feeling for 16 seconds, and that goes into your long-term memory. Isn't that tripping? Okay, so
Is
gratitude, how
that why
many?
we don't remember bad sex? Because it just doesn't last that long, and so then it never gets into our. Just kidding. Go back to gratitude.
That's like bad chocolate. There is no such thing. No such thing. Do you do like, do you have a number? Like, I'm going to do 5 gratitudes this morning. Think about that. 3 or
So yeah, well, three's the baseline.
3's the magic number.
And when I speak to people, like I actually believe so deeply in gratitude that I created like a free gratitude journal to my website for people
Oh,
to reflect in gratitude in the morning and the evening, because the research has shown that if you actually reflect on where your happiness is during the day, it allows
mm-hmm.
you to track your happiness,
Yeah.
and then you can look back and go, wait, why am I spending time on this thing? And so you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
self-correct, before you get through the entire month. But yeah, I challenge people to do 3 a day, at least 3 in the morning, or 3 in the morning, 3 at night. Yeah.
Do you feel like it's important to find 3 different things every day?
Oh, you mean than the day before?
Yeah.
Oh, not necessarily. Like,
Like the
I'm
same
grateful
thing?
for but I mean, it's not like always like, I'm grateful for my child. But I mean, my days are pretty full.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jesus. So, I mean, I usually can find 3 different things.
I think it's so. Here's the thing about finding different things is that I find that if I'm grateful for my sobriety, grateful for my husband, grateful for my kids, like if I like say the same thing, it becomes rote and I don't feel it.
You don't feel it. Yeah, yeah.
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 So, but I feel guilty if I don't say those things.
I mean, I think that there's like given gratitudes, and it also depends on like what's my motivation? So if I, if I'm practicing cognitive reframing, which is
Uh-huh.
literally changing your perception about your current reality, because I can't change my reality. Like
Right.
I can't change the fact that like people are arguing over when I get to put a shot in the arm. I can't change anything about that, but I can change my perception of what's happening. So if I'm, and girl, let me tell you, in March, I was cognitive reframing about 455,000 times a day. Like I'm grateful to be home with my husband and child all the time. Like if I'm cognitively reframing, like
Yeah.
that's purposeful. But I think
Okay.
sometimes we're like, yeah, I don't want to be flippant, like giving gratitude. Like I am, it is a given that I'm grateful for my husband and my child and all those sorts of
Right.
things. So if something else comes up, and that's what gets said. But my child
Okay.
still knows that I'm grateful that he exists.
Oh, that's so sweet. Um, just to uh, maybe define a little bit about cognitive reframing, or do you have like a 3 steps? Like, what is cognitive reframing?
Oh yeah. So it's it really is kind of the basic in the therapeutic community. If you go to therapy, then you've probably done this with your therapist, even if you didn't know you were doing it. But
Yeah.
truly, cognitive reframing is changing your perception, altering your perception of your current reality. So like we can't change many times our physical situation. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't change how much I get paid. I can't change, like there's some things like I can't change how much, whatever, but I can change the way I perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were saying, and so I did a lot of webinars about gratitude in March and April, and
Mm-hmm.
people would say, I'm stuck inside. Instead, be like, I am grateful I get to spend this time on this, cleaning up this room that I've never been able to clean up before. Or, I have to, we have to do blah, blah, blah. I get to do blah,
I
blah,
get
blah
to.
today. So sometimes it's just like little words, but
Oh,
I mean,
words are so powerful.
words are powerful. And what you hear yourself say or think becomes reality. The way we perceive things becomes reality. So it's all intertwined, and there's nothing crunchy about it. Like it's so scientific. Like sometimes I want people to know that like there's
It's not
some
woo
black and
woo.
white here. Exactly. So for my like data people, like it's well researched.
Yeah,
So give it a
absolutely.
try.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for breaking that down for me. And what's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
Oh God. Funny gratitude. The people that used to say, hi, my name is Amber and I'm a grateful recovering addict. And
Yeah.
I'll be like, fork you and the reindeer you rode in on. Like, please just stop talking.
Just stop
Uh,
it.
I, it's, well, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be a struggle then. If we could like fast forward to where it all stopped hurting,
Yeah.
it'd be so much easier. But I wish that I wish that I'd really listened, or I wish I'd really understood that the no relationships in a year thing was a really serious suggestion.
No relationships in a year.
I wish that was something I paid a little more attention
Want to hear
to.
a funny story?
Yeah, go.
I started dating my husband when I was 5 months sober. We've been together for 26 years. I mean, so far so good, but you never know.
I mean, everybody's past different.
That is, and you know what? I actually acknowledge that is the exception, not the
Exception.
rule. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. I just got lucky. You know what's funny is when I was growing up, I was like, I want love to hit me like a freight train, and I want to feel like the luckiest girl in the world, and I do. He's gonna listen to this later. Just FYI. Okay, no, that is beautiful. That's no relationships in a year. That I mean, here's the thing, because water seeks its own level, right? And in the beginning, we're sick, and so that's what we're going to attract. We're going to attract our own level of sickness, and so it's a good idea to wait for a year until you get some recovery in you, and you sort out your baggage, and you get a little stability, become emotionally sober before you attract a partner. Makes life so much
Well,
easier.
because also what you don't really realize is that you're just adding to the amends that you got to make up. Now so I actually started dating somebody that was like much more sober, and I was not 13th stepped, like,
Oh, I
it
wasn't
wasn't that
either.
kind of thing. But I'm so grateful for that relationship because it got me
Mm,
exposure to the program. But man, did I hurt him, and man, did I have to do some amends. And I'm grateful today that relationship was mended, and been back to visit many times because he still lives in New York. But Oh, I took him through the ringer because he
Oh,
was
that's such a good point.
dating a newbie.
God, I'm so self-centered. I'm always thinking, oh, it's not good for me to date somebody. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
it's really, we can be very hurtful when we're
Oh my gosh.
newly so. So that's
I, re-
actually a good point.
I remember when it finally exploded, and he said, I would pay to have you out of my life. Just, and like it cut
You're like, how
so deep.
much?
I mean, it cut so
Sorry.
deep, but
Yeah.
I knew, I mean, but when he said those words, I realized like just he would do anything to make the hurt go away because he loved
Oh,
me, but like
yeah.
I couldn't get it together. And
Yeah.
so it's not just, there's so many things. If you're listening and you're new to all this, there's so much behind the suggestions that you're like, that's just stupid. Like, I want to get laid. I mean, like, that's just, I mean, you think about yourself, there's so much about other people. And I
Mm,
mean, my baggage was not Louis Vuitton. I mean, I had so much baggage back there I had to clean up. And so I was
yeah.
just adding to the stuff that I had to dig through, and the
Right.
remorse and all that sort of stuff. So there are reasons behind the suggestions that don't make sense until they do, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. Just trust the process. That is very
I
good.
hated that. I hated hearing that.
I know.
Gosh.
I mean, but if we knew what to do, we would have done it already,
But
right?
that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it now, but like, ugh.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite quotes when I first got sober was a problem can't be solved with the mind that created it. The Albert Einstein
Oh,
quote.
okay.
Yeah. It was like my mind led me to this place because I had certain beliefs and assumptions
Yeah.
that led me to ask the same questions. I got the same answers. I would take the same actions. And it was like a spiral. I just like, I had that experience where I'd be like, how did I get here again?
Like,
How did I
oh,
get here again? Well,
again.
it's my own thinking. It's a problem
Yeah.
cannot be solved with this. I think the actual quote is a problem can't be solved with the same level of thinking that created it. But anyway, you look at it, yeah, it's the brain. It's
Yeah.
the way I was thinking. So that is brilliant. So shall we talk about your story? I would love to hear like what it was like, what happened, and what things are like now. I mean, I know you have an amazing story, and I haven't had an opportunity to hear a story like yours. So I'm so excited for you to share it.
I'm excited, and I'm gonna give you the Reader's Digest version. I don't want to
Okay.
ramble forever, but I mean, there are some important pieces that, and then I hope that people listening, uh, yeah, maybe hope so something like I say helps or
Mhm.
resonates or maybe makes you feel like you're not alone. Because I
Yeah.
know in the beginning, even though I got sober in New York City, and there were tons of gay people, which I know was a luxury because a lot of times people in the LGBT community that are getting sober are the only one. And
Wow.
so you use things like this to normalize yourself, and I get it. And so I'm grateful for the medium to get the message out there. But I grew up in the deep South, and that's an important part of my story because I was born in Georgia, but then I was given up for adoption at birth, and then placed in emergency foster care. And then 2 years later, I was adopted by the people that I call my parents.
Two
Um,
years?
so I went to emergency foster care, and then I went to a foster care system, a foster
Huh.
home. And of course, I remember nothing about this.
Right. Yeah.
But what I find interesting about recovery is the number of adopted people that I've met in recovery is through the roof. And I got to tell you that I'm not surprised because now listen, I want to be very clear. My parents did the absolute best they could do with a child that was very messed up emotionally. But in 1978, by the time they got me, girl, there wasn't no Oprah. There wasn't no like self-help. We didn't talk about feelings. I mean, I grew up in like a mile off the road kind of house. I mean, like it was in the country. So, we didn't do feelings, which is really ironic that now I'm the feelings guy, but we didn't do feelings. So, I was very messed up. I was scared you were going to leave. I was a compulsive liar. But I really understand now that it's because I was trying to create a reality where I felt normal. So my first drug was fantasy. I learned to just escape because I did not fit in the South. everyone wanted to play sports ball, and I was the sports ball. I mean, like I just, I didn't want to play football. I wanted to sing and dance and be a majorette, and that was just not a thing that my dad was really happy about. I mean, you can't blame him. I mean, come on. Right. Back in the 70s in the South. So middle school, high school were pretty miserable experiences for me. I was, I've always been gay, but I was very involved in the church, and it was traumatic. I mean, traumatic is the right word, to know that there was this thing about you that you knew was there. And then when you finally figured out what it was, that was the thing that they were talking about at church. You were going to go to hell. So you're going to this place that like loves you, but not really, because if they knew, I mean, it was traumatic. And I had some amazing memories from youth group and my youth ministers. I mean, that part of church I loved, but like every single youth trip, every single one, every choir trip, you go to the altar and you would pray for this, because they said if you pray anything, it would go away. You could fix it. So just like praying for like this thing to go away, and like you're like, Lord, I'm leaving this at the altar, and then you get up and it goes with you. And so then you're hearing that like you're not a good enough Christian, because if you were, it would just go away. It was very, very traumatic. And so I went to college at a Southern Baptist university. And I was a minister. I still am a minister. It gives me a little bit of joy that the Southern Baptists can't get rid of me. But I was an active, like, practicing minister, working with youth and music. And I absolutely did go to this school thinking it would de-gay me. I mean, think about it. I mean, if everything else in the world did not work, surely a Southern Baptist university would make it go away. It did not. And so what's really interesting is that, like, up until this point, I've never tried alcohol or drugs. And I think that was little baby Jesus, because as bad as I was hurting, I think if I had begun to, I wouldn't be here. Like it would, so I think it all kind of, looking back now, it all kind of makes sense. The other good thing about going to Southern Baptist University is that nobody's having sex, because everybody's saving themselves for marriage. So it was perfect, because I didn't have to sleep with anybody. Perfect. It was perfect. And like you laugh, but I mean, I've talked to so many guys who went to this school for very similar reasons, because we could kind of like, hide. We hide. Yeah. So now music was a huge part of my life. I was a voice major, which was also very conflicting, because I was in all these contemporary Christian music groups. And I love singing Christian music, but yet I'm going to hell. I mean, it was so conflicting. So I graduated college. I taught high school for a year, and I was to be married to a girl. And then that year of high school, things just began to crumble. You can only keep the charade going for so long. And we were at my house, and there's this movie on Lifetime called Doing Time on Maple Drive. If you've never seen it, check it out. I think it was one of Jim Carrey's earliest roles, but he played this serious character. It's so bizarre. But it's about this guy named Matt, who his fiance was named Allison. Mine was named Allison, and he was gay, but he tried to kill himself because he knew. But then it came out, and it was like the aftermath of like, and so like I'm hyperventilating in my childhood bedroom with my, future wife. And I got the words out like that I'm gay. And then things just started crumbling. And
was she the first person you told?
So I got asked this on a show a few weeks ago, and I said yes. And I think that's not true. I think that I told my best friend Chris first. I think I've killed a lot of brain cells, but I think that that's how it went. It's the first person that for sure the first person that might have judged me, or there could have been consequences.
Was Chris gay?
There wouldn't have been. He is. Yes, he's also a gay.
Okay. Did you say a gay?
Yeah, it's a thing I do.
Okay.
Still my best friend. He's.
So you were able to tell Chris because you trusted him, because he was like you.
Well, and what's funny is that when we met at school, we were both very much living a different life.
Yeah.
I mean, we ended up dating sorority sisters because we were in the same fraternity. I mean, and what's so funny is that, and we're all still connected now, so now everything is fine.
Yeah.
That we were sitting in their sorority house watching, I think we were watching either Dead Poet Society or Steel Magnolias, one of the two.
I knew
And
you were going to say Steel Magnolias.
And Chris and I I think it's Dead Poet Society. Chris and I were sobbing, and the two girls were sitting on the end of the couch like, what is happening right now? What is going on? But anyway, whoa, I didn't think I was going to tell that story. So I told Allison. Then that also, I got invited to go to the gay club in Birmingham, and so I went, and rumors started circulating, which were true rumors, but I got invited by my church that I was working at to leave and to not return. And I was just volunteering there as a youth minister. And that began kind of my resentments toward the church, that it just seemed so hypocritical. And so I graduated. I mean, I resigned after a year. I did my tour of duty teaching high school, made it a year. And then I ran to New York City to be a performer. And that's where my addiction really took off.
When did you start drinking?
After college. So
after college.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, because, excuse me, Kragalogias. Maybe Galogias. When I was, see, the other great thing is that I didn't have to drink until I was 21 because it was breaking the law. So there were all these pluses for going to
you
a
were
Christian
such
school.
a rule follower.
Woohoo, that changed. But when I tried my first hit of ecstasy when I was, why are you laughing at me?
I was about to take a sip of coffee and you're like, my first hit of ecstasy. First of many, I would imagine.
Before I moved to New York, and really that's, I mean, everything stopped hurting.
Man.
I mean, drugs exist for a reason. I mean, it all stopped hurting, and I chased that feeling for, oh my gosh, so long.
When was the first time? What was your first thing? A drug or alcohol?
Oh, drug. I struggle with this even into my second rehab. I've never really been an alcoholic. I have alcoholism. I'm a drug addict. I mean, I'm drugs all the way.
I think of it all as addiction, and it doesn't matter what you use. I don't care if it's shopping, sex, sugar, people.
Yeah.
It's all about a distraction from the pain in my mind. But anyway, okay. So drugs. The first thing you ever did was a drug. It was ecstasy?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My fraternity brothers thought it'd be funny to give me alcohol one night. And so they did. They
gave me some first time.
That was the first time. Yeah. And I thought I was drinking fruit punch. And then 20 minutes later, I was like, woo!
I feel good.
And
they so weird though. Tricked you into your first drink.
No, but it's fine. But it was so weird though, because at Sanford, I try not to say the words. Oh, anyway. Okay. Where I went to school, it doesn't matter. There was no alcohol at fraternity and sorority parties. That's the other great thing about this school. I mean, so literally it was this perfect place for this person that's trying to fit in under the, we actually went to parties and remember the parties.
What the hell do people do when they go to parties and they're not drinking? They just eat.
We talked and we danced and we had
eat,
themed
talk,
parties.
Dance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no drinking, no sex. It was great.
You are a good time. Okay, and then what happened?
So let me fast forward this. So I moved to New York City. I was actually a pretty successful performer. I mean, I feel like in New York City, if you're getting paid to sing and dance.
Yes, that's a professional entertainer.
So, I mean, I went around the world performing on cruise ships, like all over the world, Antarctica. I mean,
that is so cool.
But I mean, I definitely gave up my career because of drugs. I couldn't. That whole fun and problems, fun and problems. It progressed quickly. I thought I was doing cocaine one night and it was really crystal meth. And then my story just I went from
Did you love it?
Oh God, yes. I mean, I went from snorting it to smoking it to shooting it up
Oh, wow.
within like, no time.
Wow.
And so I lost everything, got fired from, shows, ended relationships. I mean, it was overdosed a gajillion times. Went to my first rehab. I would say it didn't take. Um, but at this point, like I'm in and out of program. Like I'm trying to get to the end of this thing so we can just talk. But
I'm not rushing you.
I
This is fascinating.
okay. Um, there were two kind of big moments that I think are important. One, I did try to take my own life, and it's one of the reasons that I do talk about suicide when I speak, because I don't think that we are not. I don't think we are not telling people what they should and should not say when they're worried about somebody. We don't teach people that outside of higher education. When have you ever been told the questions you should and should not ask? It's not something we do. And it's really important, but because it's the word suicide and like, because the question you ask is, are you considering killing yourself? Like that's the question that you ask. That's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Like it's even uncomfortable to hear, but we're not talking about it. And if we're talking about college students, suicide is like this. It's the second leading cause of death on college campuses, but it's also considered to be the most preventable, but not if you're not paying attention. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this work is because we need. I mean, quite frankly, I think we need people like me who are very real to have the conversation.
For sure. Yeah.
So I did try to take my own life. It was not successful, clearly. But there was a lot of shame there. And then I overdosed and woke up in ICU with a tube down my throat. And the hospital chaplain standing there telling me that the reason my chest hurt so bad was because I died the night before. And when you said earlier, like, how did I get here again? Like, I can still take myself back to that moment of like, how, like, what am I doing again? And I just finished this like media course, and I realized that I'd not really ever thought about the fact of like how powerful that moment was, that for some reason that time when I walked out of the hospital, I was like, okay, game on. Let's like, because they tell you jails, institutions, and deaths. Well, like, so I never got arrested, knock on wood, when I was using. I'd been to a few psych wards. And so now I've been dead. So like, where do you go from there other than like trying to get better? And so I found this group of men in New York City, this meeting called PAX. It's an all men's group. My sponsor, Joe D, saved my life. Because I mean, the trauma of growing up in the church made it really hard to see the word God over and over and over and over again. And they're like, it could be a doorknob. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me either. Like, I can't go from like guy in a robe to a doorknob. But honestly, music is what helped me figure it out. I was listening to this, I'm not going to sing to you, but there was this song that I was listening to this morning called The Dreams I Dream Review. It's from Avalon. And it talks about the fact that like, that thing in the program, the dreams I dream for you are deeper than the ones you're clinging to, more precious than the finest things you knew, and truer than the treasures you pursue. Let the old dreams die like stars that fade from view, and take this cup I offer and drink deeply of the dreams I dream for you. Like that song helped save my life, because I got
chills.
I mean, literally, Avalon, if you ever hear this, you helped save my life. Because I realized that like I went to New York City and was doing it, and then I decided to put a needle in my arm instead. And so I had to mourn for this life that could have been, like it. And that I'm grateful for my life today, but like it's still sometimes a little painful that because I mean, I was talented, but I also had this like, like charisma that casting directors liked, and my name is Archie, for heaven's sakes. But girl, I used to walk around. This is when we had remember when you had to you had to hold the CD player like this when you were walking? Do you remember because you couldn't skip? Do you remember CD walking?
Yes.
Yes, girl. I used to walk. I used to walk around New York City like this. Like when my music on, I would sing that, and I would sing "Astonishing" from Little Women, Sutton Foster. Girl, I would sing me some Sutton Foster. Sutton Foster got me to more meetings because I was like, I'm going to go to this meeting. But these men at this meeting like just kind of took me in and said, "You're going to get this." And I put time together, and then I ended up leaving New York, and then I was one of those people that was like, you know what, alcohol was never my problem. Let me drink again. And then
the gateway drug.
Crashed and burned. Went to my second rehab, and then life began to get better. Kind of late.
It's important to answer to have clarity about the abstinence question. Like complete abstinence. I did that same thing. It's like I knew that alcohol was a problem, and so, but it took me 60 days to get 30 because I smoked some weed, and that was like, oh, I am powerless over this too. Like I need to stop all drugs. So yeah.
Yeah, it's and everyone's got to find their own path. And when I decided that I was going to, I called my sponsor and I was like, so I made a decision, and he was like, oh, have you?
Oh, have you now?
Have you? And it worked for a minute, and until it didn't.
Until it didn't.
Didn't work. Yeah.
Okay, so you drank alcohol. Did you go right back to drugs immediately?
Not immediately. Like it took a hot minute, but then we, the off ramp happened, and then I was like, "Oh, this is going to explode." And so the good news is that I had foresight, and a human in my life that loved me a lot, to go, "Oop, nope. This is
back to rehab.
We're about to be like, rinse and repeat. Here we go again. And so I sure did walk up into rehab. My therapist's name was Dee Dee, loved her. And so I said, hi, so I'm Archie, and I'm a crystal meth addict, but I just want to be very clear that I'm going to continue to drink wine. And she was like, bless your heart.
That is such a Southern thing. Were you in the South when that happened?
Oh, yeah, we were in Texas. Yeah, I went to Texas. Yep.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Denial. So the second time, did you do like the inpatient 30-day thing?
Both times, yeah.
Both times. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, rehab is expensive too.
Well, I'm grateful for some insurance. Now, I had like a job, like a big job.
A big job.
And I'm very grateful that the CEO was like, yep. Now I also understand that they kind of, it's kind of against the law if you call and say, but he's like, go, and your job will be here. And so they just, like, Archie just needs some time off, and people didn't ask questions. And, it kind of came out later, but it's also, it's much easier to go away when you're like a little Twinkie boy in New York and you have no responsibilities and no pets and no whatever. Like, but like as an adult, when you like are in a relationship and a house and a job and a car, and like it's
harder.
Stressful. And so I was blessed that there were men in my rehab who were in the same place. I think it'd have been really hard if it was me and like, because at both rehabs, there were like 14-year-old kids who were addicted to heroin. And I'm like, how'd this happen? But there were people who were my age who had, wives and, partner. Well, I was the only gay one, but like wives and like kids and jobs. And so we were able to kind of stick together because we all knew what we were giving up, but what we would be giving up forever if we did not,
Ooh, that's a good point. Temporarily giving up as opposed to giving up forever.
Yeah.
That's
it was like I had always said that, like, so when you go on national tours, you do like talk back sessions afterwards with the students who want to be in theater. Like, and I loved it. I loved talking to them. But I always knew that I wanted like a house and a dog and a husband, like, and so I had all those things. But then this other thing was going to, make it all implode.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. We talked before we started, we were talking a little bit about morning, like praying the gay away. Like when you told me that, it just broke my heart because I understand. I grew up in the church too, and I tried to pray myself away. Right? It's, for you, it was about being gay, but for me, it was about being me. right? It's like, God change me, God fix me. But it was the same thing. God fix me, like I was
Yeah.
broken or something. And God never fixed me. I'm still waiting. But no, I totally, the idea of going somewhere to pray, that just breaks my heart. I mean, people think about it so differently now. Like, I can't imagine. I know that there's some people who still think that,
Oh,
like, that's a thing,
they
but
do. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that breaks my heart to hear that. And you were talking about mourning the loss of
Mhm.
what was supposed to be, or the life you were
Mhm.
trying for. Do you want to tell me a little more about that?
Yeah. 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 I mean, well, I grew up knowing that I was going to get married to a girl and have 2.5 kids and live in a house and like do all these things. And so you spend your whole life preparing for this thing. And for people that are gay, gay men especially, it's an act the entire time. And so I think, well, for me at least, I had to figure out like which parts of my past were real and which parts of my past were in my head, because I spent so much time
Oh,
being somebody that I wasn't, that I'm like, wait a minute, did that happen? Like, I don't really remember if that happened or not. Like,
wow.
for real. I mean, because
Yeah.
if you spend your entire life as a charade, which parts of it are real? So
Right.
you, for me, I had to like mourn this entire part, like I'm never going to have that. And like, I was in the band in high school. And, at this point, my parents and I didn't have the best relationship. And that really was on me, because I was just pushing people. I mean, because people left my whole life. So if I just push you away, then just, it doesn't hurt anymore. Well, I mean, now I understand, because I have a couple of degrees in this field, but like, if you push people away enough, they stay away. That's the way that it
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, they would go to my brother's football games all the time. Well, that's because they had a different relationship. But like, I was never going to have that. I was never going to be the football player with my father sitting in the stands cheering me on. That's never going to happen for me. And so, but yet that's what I wanted, because that's all you're taught as, a young kid in the South. So I for sure had to stop and mourn. I also had to mourn for, there was this national tour that I was being sent in for by my agent. And all I had to do was show up. And I knew that if I just shown up, I was going to get this part. That really would have changed the trajectory of my career. And I got high the night before. And so I didn't go. And then that agent, who is a very big agent and is even bigger today than they were back then, they dropped me. And so there are these, and I don't, we talked about this a little bit when we first called on the phone, that there's this concept in recovery of like, we're going to put everything on the shelf except the drugs. Just stop doing the drugs. Well, for me, there was number one, there was mental illness. Like I diagnosed mental illness that today I take medicine for, praise Jesus, to make the noises not be so loud up there. But there was just so much sadness that like, okay, sure. Well, if I'm not taking the drugs to numb the sadness, then what are we doing about this sadness? So, I understand the concept. I'm not so sure how sound it is therapeutically. I feel, at least for me, I think there needed to be some work going on there, other than just going to a room in a church basement. And eventually that came, and that's when the healing actually began for me.
So the basement meetings help you stabilize, but it was the therapy that helped you heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then again, like, everyone's path is different.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not, people need to find their own path. I'm saying this is for me, that's what I needed. And also, again, I want to say how blessed I was that there were multiple meetings in New York City every day
Yeah.
for just gay people. There was like
Oh,
hundreds of
yeah.
meetings, but
Yeah.
and then when I moved to other places, I would go to meetings for weeks and never see a gay person. So, and not that you have to be, with gay people to get sober, but it definitely helped, because there's so much internalized shame and hatred and all this stuff that's just like bubbling up for all of us. It's a little different. I know addicts all think we're different, but it is a little different than when you come with that level of self-loathing that you're trying to also get sober.
Yeah. We need to be able to see other people that are like us get better. Right. And there is something about looking somebody in the eye and being like, I totally get you. Me too. Like there's something bonding. It's like trauma bonding. It's like,
Oh my gosh. But no, it's, I mean,
me
I
too.
tell people, I can't stand it when people say, oh, I know how you feel. And I'm like, do you really? Do you?
What
Because
would you prefer to hear? I could see how you would feel that way.
none of those things.
What would you
Just,
rather hear?
like, can I listen? How can I support you?
How can I
Like,
support you? Oh,
like
I love
I would
that.
rather that than like, but I mean, it's so, oh, I know how you feel, man.
Do
No, you don't.
you?
Like I mean, sometimes I'm literally like, do you? And they're like, oh shit. But I think
Not really.
I really think it's one of the most condescending things we can say in life. Oh, I know how you
But
feel.
is it? I mean, I feel like
But if
it's a
you,
thoughtless thing because you don't really think it through. But
it
I
is
think it comes
thoughtless.
from yeah, it's
Oh, it does
thoughtless.
come. It does come from a good. I mean, I get it. But
Yeah,
it's also, I
it's
guess,
not
also just
true.
it's because I teach this that it just annoys me. But
It's also not
it
true, right?
unintentionally condescending. There we go. Unintentionally condescending
I
because
hate condescending,
they're trying to be helpful, but it's not, and it's
but
not.
it's
Um,
not.
it's not.
Yeah,
Especially
uninformed
someone who is
helpfulness.
struggling with depression. It's not helpful. Like, oh, I know how you feel. Mm,
Mm,
no,
bitch, please.
I bet you don't. I bet you really don't.
Can't imagine that you do. Well, yeah, I mean, that lifestyle of well, it's not a lifestyle. Forgive me if I'm stumbling on my words, but I had a friend that was gay who helped me to see, like, I didn't know, people didn't used to talk about it. I'm 52, so when I was coming up, nobody talked about it, so I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
sure.
And this guy, a friend of mine, a colleague at work, told me, he's like, I didn't pick this. Like nobody, and I don't, these are his words. Like, don't get mad at me. He was like, I did not choose this. I was born this way. He goes, he goes, for me, it was he told me it was a difficult lifestyle. And maybe those aren't the right words, but he goes, it was a difficult life for him and he didn't choose it. He goes, why would I choose this? This
Yeah,
is hard in this society. Why would I choose it? And I was like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense to me. Like
yeah,
I always accept people the way they are. I don't give two shits. But when he told me that, I was like, oh, like that. In my mind, I was like, oh, that's something I could say to my dad because my dad was very religious,
yeah,
right? He grew up with that idea that in the way that you were brought up, I was brought up in this church the way you were, and so I knew what they were thinking, and now I had information to be like, that's not a choice. You're just like born this way, and it's not a bad thing. And if God made you that way, then it can't be wrong. Like that's like logical,
logical.
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
God forbid we battle religion with logic.
Wow.
I'm gonna piss somebody off today.
Oh, man, that's a different. That's a different show.
That's a whole different
That's
show.
a different show. Well, and
Oh
see,
my
but
god.
see that point right there. That's why it's so hard for recovering Christians, I believe, in the
Mm.
beginning of sobriety, because it's like, well, wait, which thing am I believing? Like, so I'm believing this thing over here on these two charts on the wall, but yet not what was set up. Like, which thing is it? I mean,
That's very
it's,
confusing.
I mean, it really is. I mean,
So do you still consider yourself to be a Christian?
yeah.
Yeah.
Cade was baptized. We found
Oh.
not a Southern Baptist church, but
Mm-mm.
a church here that loved us and loves us, and
Oh.
I can't wait to be able to go back and fellowship. When we all can be around each other, because I mean, Bill and I both grew up in the church, and both want that for Cade, because some of my fondest memories of uh, teenage years are like youth trips and all those sorts
Yeah.
of things, and I want that for him.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I refuse to go somewhere anymore where I feel tolerated. Like, I don't need
Ooh,
you to tolerate me. So then,
that's gross.
and there are some religious people out there that like to tolerate me, and I'm like, I don't need time. I don't got time for you. Go away.
Mm. Yeah. Very, very clear. I mean, thoughts are things like you can feel what somebody thinks. And they don't even have to say it, right? It's like we have to change our thinking, we have to change our
Yeah.
energy. Um, well, listen, this was such an enlightening conversation. How do people get a hold of you? I know you do some all kinds of work with people. If people want to work with you, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah. So the easiest, two easy ways. My website is archiecares.com. I decided when I was going to start my business name is going to say what I mean. So Archie Cares. And then also if you can jump on Instagram, it's the Arch Star. The Arch Star predates the Feelings guy. And so it's just going to stay. So
The
those
Arch
are the two.
Star?
The Arch Star. Yeah.
At Arch Star. I will put this in the show notes so
For
people
sure.
don't have to try to write this down. So, one of the things about doing the podcast is I meet some really amazing people, and my friend, my cuz, you are going to be at the top of the list. I am so grateful. I was such a God, like God showed up. I was like, whoa, okay, I guess we're talking to Archie, my cousin. I will forever refer to you as
I know,
cousin.
but isn't it still, does it still kind of make you smile when things like this happen?
Oh yeah.
Like when when you called and you were like, yeah, it's my birthday. And I was like, because I mean, we're going through a challenging time in lives. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
And so little things like that. And that is why that is what the beauty of podcast, I think right now, or just to be able to get positive messages out there.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a wonderful thing what you're doing. And I'm honored to have been a part. And you ain't getting rid of me, girl. I'm like herpes. I do not go away. Okay.
You're my cousin. You're my cousin. I was going to say the same thing. You are not getting rid of me all that easily. Listen, I enjoy spending time with you so much. Thank you so much for being the fabulousness that is you. I love it. And we'll talk again real soon.
All right. So good. Have a good one.
You too.